Nikki Haley, and she was on Fox yesterday, and she's saying the Trump campaign is doing it wrong. She says she wants Trump to win, but if he keeps concentrating on race, the race of Kamala Harris,
Yeah.
if he keeps concentrating on the size of the crowds turning up at the Harris rallies, that's not what voters care about, and he's not going to win. And she wants him to quit whining and focus on the issues, which I think is contrary to Trump's personality. She's asking him to be somebody that he's not. Do you agree with her? What are your thoughts on that?
Let me get this straight. Nikki Haley is whining about Trump's whining. Is that what we're talking about here?
It sounds a lot like it, Gil Gross.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, good. Just wanted to be sure what we were talking about. Well, look, she's right. Something that you get to say, everybody gets to say about Nikki Haley at some point, because she's taken every possible position and every possible issue at some point. So at some point you get to say Nikki Haley's right, and at some point you get to say Nikki Haley's wrong, because Nikki Haley. Is she right on the issue? Yes. Are you right about Trump's personality? Absolutely. Look, Trump is a sociopath, and I'm not saying that as a knock. It's a psychological condition. It has a lot to do with his parents, who are horror shows. If this were, and I've often said this, and probably have said this on this program before, if Donald Trump was the guy, he lived in an apartment building, he was the guy down the hall, and you never saw him because he didn't have any personal friends, but you'd meet him at the trash incinerator once in a while, and you'd say hello, and he'd kind of look at you and grunt and go back down. You'd feel bad for him. You'd say, ah, poor man. He has no friends. He doesn't know how to be with people. He only thinks about himself. And you wouldn't invite him into your apartment for coffee or anything, but
No.
You'd feel bad. And that's Donald Trump. Trump doesn't care about you. Trump doesn't care about anyone else. And Trump gets in these crazy things, talking about, I was on this helicopter ride with Willie Brown, which is, the most improbable thing is if I were to say, Mao Zedong, who I have nothing in common with and who's been dead for years, and we went for a hike yesterday. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. The whole story was so cockamamie. But that's Donald. He'll defend that story, even though it's been proven.
Even though the lawmaker that was on that helicopter, who's from Southern California, right, has said, nope, it was me.
It was him, and it was in New Jersey.
Yeah.
They weren't going over the Paradise Fire. It was over New Jersey, and it was more than a decade ago, and it was insane. But he'll defend that the same way he's defended seeing the Twin Towers fall from Trump Tower, which is physically impossible to do. The Muslims rioting in New Jersey on 9/11, which they did not do. And he defends all of these things that are more important to him. It's more important for him to be the font of information, to be where all of your thoughts come from, than it is for him to be right, tell the truth, or, and this is the opening for the Democrats, or to say things that make sense about trying to get elected. He was a change candidate for a disaffected American populace when he first ran. It didn't last to get him a second term, so that's already a problem for him. And he's repeating a lot of the same stuff that did not work the last time. But he's not a change candidate now. He's the other old man. I'm not knocking being old. We all
get there.
it beats the hell out of the alternative. But he's sticking with these things and his personal grievances. James Carville said it ages ago when Clinton was running, and Clinton would go off thinking about various other things. And Carville said, it's the economy, stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And that became kind of the watchword the Democrats got. Oh, it's the economy. Okay, that's what people care about. I guess I'll talk about that. This makes no impression on Trump. He will mention some things about the economy. Unfortunately for him, fortunately for Democrats, nothing that really is hitting home with anybody except people that, other billionaire friends. But look, the economy and immigration could both work for him. You know, whatever one thinks of it, those are two issues where if he frames it the right way, it could work for him. And he
Yeah.
is going to race, and he's going to made up helicopter stories. Crime is up, it's not, it's down. He's going to all of these other things because of his personality.
Mm-hmm.
One warning before I release you from my blovations. Remember that though Trump will do that, his super PACs are going to concentrate on issues they find by polling will work. And your TV and your phone and your laptops are going to be filled with ads from Republican super PACs that will concentrate on the issues that Nikki Haley thinks might work. So just because Trump is off in la la land somewhere does not mean you won't hear a lot about those issues, just not from Trump.
Just not from Trump. And it's interesting that you mentioned the economy and the border. The other issue, there are three issues that were mentioned that he should be focusing on. The other one was foreign wars or what's happening in the Middle East. That if he sticks to those three issues, that they say he'll be golden. But I just don't think he can. I have a question though, which is, let's flip the script. Because Democrats look at him and they say, oh, he was slurring in the X conversation with Elon Musk, or, you know, they see maybe that it worked with Biden saying he was too old, so we're calling Trump too old. We're launching some personal attacks on him, not that they're not true or warranted, but should Democrats be sticking to the issues as well instead of trying to counterattack Trump's personal attacks?
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's as slippery as I'm going to get here. Maybe. And here's why. Remember when Obama ran the first time, he didn't run on issues. He made you feel, it's very much like the Harris campaign. Mm-hmm. He made you feel good. He didn't run on his record. He barely had one. He had been on the Senate for only a couple of years. It was, I'm change. I'm obvious change. I'm a nice guy. I smile a lot and all of that. He didn't really run on hard issues. And so does that work? Yeah, it can work. Now, Harris, over the next couple of days, is giving economic speeches. Trump is supposedly giving one too. And so we may get some hard things, but it will be interesting. She has gone up so far, and, you know, these things can spin on a dime, but she's gone up so far based very much on, wow, she's younger, she's got energy, she seems to listen to people, she seems to talk to people. She's got this vice president who people seem to like and all of that. I feel good about that. That has spun the election. Hasn't spun on an issue yet.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens by that. We'll see what happens by that when they debate. There's going to be at least one debate, less than a month away now. And, you know, we'll see how much issues do play into it. But yes, there are especially some progressives. Jonathan Chait, the columnist for New York Magazine, is really upset that Harris isn't talking more issues. I think she will, but, you know, we'll see how comfortable she is with that. We don't know that yet.
Well, she says she's going to come out and talk about economic policy sometime this week. But I've read other kind of analysis of how the campaign should roll, saying, listen, as you said, she's running on this feeling of hopefulness, right? This upswell, this momentum, people feeling this youthful change. And if that's working for her, then she shouldn't come out right now and talk policies and the nitty gritty, because people get weighed down in that instead of letting them get carried away with the feeling that maybe it wouldn't be so good for her campaign to really get down in those policies.
Yeah, it's possible. Look, Eisenhower got elected in 52, not on policy. In fact, nobody knew whether he was a Republican or a Democrat. In fact, nobody knew during his presidency really what his personal leanings were. And in fact, when ABC hired him as I think it was 64, as a convention commentator, somebody cracked what causes Eisenhower's sudden interest in politics. This was a two-term American president. So, you know, happy days are here again with FDR. Camelot with JFK, Reagan telling his stories. Reagan ran It's Morning in Ronald Reagan's America. What the hell did that mean? Nobody knew, but
Nobody
it felt
knows. Sure sounds good. Makes you feel happy, right?
a lot of campaigns do work on that. And a lot of campaigns that get mired in issues. First, political debates, that presidential debates that we ever had on television and radio, the Kennedy-Nixon debates. What was the big issue of the Kennedy and Nixon debate? If anybody remembers, raise your hand. No hands, Kimoy and Matsu. What? Yeah, 2 islands out in the Pacific. And the fate of those 2 islands, that was the big debating point. Kimoy and Matsu. Did anybody a week later care about Kimoy and Matsu? Have you heard about either of them in the news ever since?
No.
But Kennedy was the bright, fresh face.
Yep.
And Nixon was, Nixon. And it's possible that Harris might stay away from issues. She's got good arguments on the economy. Our inflation has fallen steadily. We have the best inflation rate of any of the countries that faced what was an international situation. Is it a great thing to campaign on? No, presidents don't really have much control over inflation, frankly. The Fed, maybe, but the presidency, whether it be Trump or Harris, not really that much. On immigration, Trump keeps calling her the immigration czar. Look, Biden never really gave Harris much power. Biden actually had more power from Obama than Harris had with Biden, which was a surprise to a lot of people. And even Biden got cut out by Obama a lot. Personally, they liked each other, but they weren't that close in terms of, Joe, you do this. Here's the total immigration thing that Biden gave Harris. Hey, can you talk with the leaders of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras? And try and convince them to, do a better job so they don't have all of these people coming out of those 3 countries, running through Mexico and heading to our border. Because if conditions are better in those 3 countries, the border thing will relax. That's it. That's everything Biden gave her, which gives her an out, but also it creates a situation where she's going to have to come up with something. Neither side really talks about immigration in any way that is hitting home with the American public.
Nope. It's interesting, though, that you brought up the candidate of change, because I saw this article on Politico last night, and the headline is Trump's crucial power has been neutralized because he was the change over from Biden.
Yeah, it was
they
Jeff.
Said it's the first time that a sitting vice president has become the change candidate. They said it's almost a violation of the laws of the political universe.
It is.
The quote is from the article, by definition, a vice president looking to inherit the Oval Office has been a part of the outgoing administration, and there's only so much distance the vice president can credibly put between them and their boss. So
that was Jeff Greenfield. Yeah.
It's great. It's a great article. So how is it that Kamala Harris is the candidate of change? Is it simply because she's a woman and she's younger and she's a woman of color and that's the change?
The very thing that Joe Biden's still upset about, according to people close to him, which is that he kind of got pushed out for change, is a power for Harris. I mean, they're going to campaign together this week, at least once, but they weren't that close. I mean, Democrats are saying, oh, they were very close. They weren't. Not like Mondale and Carter were. That was a real working relationship, which is rare. JFK put LBJ on the ticket to essentially A, get him out of the Senate, and B, hope that it might help him take Texas, which he did, but Texas was still a red dog Democrat state in those days, and then never talked to LBJ again. FDR talked so little to Truman that Truman didn't know there was a thing called the atomic bomb being worked on. So they didn't have a close thing. So that makes Harris look like absolute change, not just because she's a woman, but because of age. Biden's performance in that debate, which accentuated the age issue. Trump's performance with Elon Musk might increase it for him. But there were other vice presidents who could have done that. Gore should have distanced himself from Bill Clinton. He felt he couldn't because Clinton made him vice president, put him in the position to run for president.
He looked
But
disloyal.
Clinton in those last days was unpopular with progressives because he had pushed people like Robert Reich aside and brought in people like Dick Morris, because he signed the Defense of Marriage Act, which was against gay marriage, because of his welfare reform that forced women who had just given birth to go back to work in a couple of weeks, something that even Dan Quayle thought was wrong. I spent an evening with Dan Quayle and Donna Shalala when all that was going on. And it was amazing to see the two of them, who never would have voted for one another, saying, yeah, no, that's too soon. You can't send a mom back to work like after a couple of weeks. That's insanity. And Donna was Secretary of Health and Human Services at the time, and she thought it was crazy. So Clinton was very unpopular with Democrats at that time. And then, of course, there was all the sexual stuff. And if Gore had pushed away from him and said, I'm changed. Yeah, I was his vice president, but I wasn't in charge of things. And that is not the way I would ever act. And had really pushed on that, he might have won. He came close anyway. And he might have won that. So does Harris have that kind of going for her? Not something she planned on, but does she have that going for her? Is that a meaningful thing of change for a sitting vice president? Unusual. Gore was in a position to make that happen, decided not to. And is it a positive for her? Yeah. And is it rare? Yeah, sure. Absolutely, it's rare.
Did you see the conversation between Trump and Musk on X?
I saw parts of it.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
kind of painful. And 2 hours of that.
it gets a little, long. But they had this moment where they talked about labor and unions. And they kind of really dissed union workers. And now the United Auto Workers Union is filing federal labor charges against Trump and Musk for threatening to intimidate workers who go on strike. So here's what they said. This is Trump calling Musk the cutter for, letting workers go, and praising Musk for his anti-union stances. Trump said, I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say you want to quit. They go on strike. I won't mention the name of the company. This is Trump talking. But they go on strike and you say, that's okay. You're all gone. You're all gone. Every one of you is gone. Yikes.
Yes. Which I should remind you, even though these days we think about Starbucks and Amazon and people, and Tesla, certainly the biggest non-union, I think the only major non-union automaker in the United States. President Reagan did that to the flight controllers. So there's a history here. When I said stupid, what I meant was politically. I mean, I'm a union man. I'm a member of SAG-AFTRA. I picketed I work for, I do programming for CBS now, and I picketed our corporate daddy, as John Oliver likes to call whoever owns HBO any particular week, Paramount at the time. That all said, it's stupid because, and this has surprised a lot of us, unions are more popular than they ever have been. You look at any polling about unions, and it's like the approval rating is like average is 76%, which, by the way, shocks even union leaders. Are like, what the heck? And it's because corporations overplayed their hand. They pay their CEOs too much. They pay them too much in obvious ways. There are some obvious ways. Yeah, just expense everything. But they do it in public ways that show up in their SEC filings and things. So there's no hiding it. And people are scared about AI. just as they were about automation years ago. AI will create some jobs, it will do some good, but it's going to destroy a lot of jobs. And people are upset about these things. And that's made unions more and more popular because people like Howard Schultz and Elon Musk and everybody over at Amazon, Bezos, and the people who have now followed him in that job are making so much money and have overplayed their hands so badly. When you hear about Amazon drivers having to, pee in the bottles that they
Yeah.
with them in order to make enough deliveries in time, people are sympathetic. The problem with those union numbers is unions were still so savaged over the years that even though unions are more popular than ever in polling, they also have fewer members than ever.
Yeah.
Because of the destruction that took place over years. But there's no particular point of having two billionaires beating up on unions when you're trying to get working class voters in swing states to vote for you.
It's not a good look.
It's an insane thing to do. I mean, it may impress his billionaire friends and get them to give more to their super PACs and things like that. And for that, I guess, okay. But in terms of getting any votes, it's insane.
Well, it seems like, though, working class folks seem to have blinders on, those that are Trump supporters, because he's never going to be on the side of the working class. He showed that during his term in office. So you're going into it blindly thinking that he somehow has your back, and he never has.
Did you watch Dallas?
I did watch Dallas.
And who'd you root for? Who's your favorite character?
Isn't it the craziest thing? J.R. Ewing.
Yeah, of course.
The villain of the whole thing. Exactly.
Nobody ever says Bobby. It's J.R. It's this guy who's getting away with murder and stealing money from people and ruining people's lives. There's a certain part of America that loves that, even against our own instincts.
Oh, that is the best analogy. Why did we like him?
Part of it was the way Larry
was he
Hagman,
sympathetic? I mean, there was something about him.
Yeah, Larry played him beautifully. And Larry was, weirdly, a very progressive, very sweet guy. When we lived in Los Angeles, Larry and his wife had, it wasn't their kids, I think it was a nephew or something that had gone to the same school as our son. And he kept supporting the school and showing up for fundraisers, things long after his family longer had anybody there.
Yeah.
So part of it was just Larry was a very good actor.
Yeah.
But when you get beyond that, because we could choose people from Dynasty and a million other shows like that, Americans love scoundrels.
Yeah.
It's because I wasn't born into a rich family, but maybe there's a way I could become rich if I could just somehow, and it's a fantasy because most of us don't want to do anything like that, but if I could just sell my soul for just a little, I'd have this nice house and stuff. It's an American fantasy.
Sure.
Trump, to a degree, because remember, he used to be a liberal Democrat. He gave tons of money to the Clintons. The Clintons were at the wedding when he and Melania got married. Trump, for a lot of people, was this guy that they never heard of from Queens, even though his father was a multimillionaire. And now he's this celebrity, and he's on Howard Stern, and then eventually he gets The Apprentice and stuff. And maybe that could be me. He wasn't a rags to riches story, but he was a who the hell is he to riches story. Mm-hmm. And Americans still like that kind of stuff. Why do we give millions of dollars to televangelists? Poor people do this. They give it to televangelists who come right out and say, I need another jet plane.
Yep.
I only got 3. I need a 4th jet plane. And, other than you want to sing a Gordon Lightfoot song a lot about leaving on a jet plane, what possible purpose would there be in that? But people will give it to them. We love our rich people.
Crazy.
We do. It doesn't make any sense in terms of facts, but in terms of emotions, it's something that if you're dealing with politics and you're dealing with personalities and things, you have to deal with.
There's a story that I wanted to ask you about before we go.
Sure.
I have so many things still left on my list of things to ask you, and we're running out of time. But this is this retired Republican senator.
Yeah.
His name is Richard Burr, and he
Mhm.
voted to impeach Trump,
Yeah.
which could have prevented Trump from running for office again. He now says he will vote for Trump come November.
Yeah.
I think it's the ultimate in hypocrisy, but he says, hey, no. He said maybe someone will have a hard time squaring my decision to vote for him, but I don't have a hard time with it because I understand why I voted for impeachment. He said it's not a disqualifier. He said I thought it was a bad choice that I thought a president made at the time, and that some people are shocked. But he said, I think I might have voted a different way that if I told them. He says now he may have voted a different way. But yeah, so he was among Republicans, 7
Yeah.
Senate Republicans who joined Democrats in voting to convict Trump for the events of January 6th. And now he says he's going to vote for the guy.
Yeah. So you're asking.
I mean, it's one of these things where I guess I'm asking for your comments on this. Do you find that it's hypocritical to do one thing and then turn around and do something else?
Here's an answer that'll tick everybody off. No. and I'll tell you why. Let's flip it. So let's say that Joe Biden had actually, and by the way, again, there's zero evidence of this, even though there's more bad things about Hunter Biden coming out, but
Right.
it doesn't involve the president. He just for people who are going, what? Hunter Biden apparently went to the American ambassador in Italy and asked for help for Burisma, the Ukrainian oil company he was working with, to do business in Italy. But there's no signs that anything went up to the White House. And in fact, the ambassador kind of went, this is kind of skanky, so now we're not doing this.
Right.
Anyway, but let's say that Biden had helped Hunter Biden do things and had violated the law and had escaped impeachment because the Senate decided not to convict. Now, let's say Biden is running against Trump for president, and you want a liberal Supreme Court someday, or at least one, not one that's locked into the right wing for the next 40, 50 years. You want abortion access. You want civil rights, women's rights. You want honest elections, all these things. Are you still going to vote for Biden, or are you going to vote for Trump? You're going to vote for Biden.
I know, but it's this thing that bothers me is this age-old thing that we're looking at which is policy over who the person is, who the whether they have good character or not, whether you want all the things you just mentioned, and you're willing to sacrifice having someone sitting at the helm of the country who maybe isn't a good person.
I agree with you. Let's go back to Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Bill Clinton. Not just the affairs, including one with White House intern, which would have been, as an intern, would have violated absolutely every HR rule at every corporation in America, even the most conservative. Yeah. So let's go back to Bill, and Bill does all these things, and he brings, as I said earlier, brings Dick Morris in and listens to Dick, and Bob Reich can't get into his office anymore, and he and Bob go back to when they were both going to Oxford together, and it was like, oh my God, this man's a disaster as a human being, and he lies under oath, and oh Lord, and now he's running against Bob Dole, and Democrats voted for him. Because were you really going to vote for Bob Dole? And Dole was a nice man, by the way, was a very nice man and worked with liberal Democrats. I called Bob when George McGovern died, and they had worked together on getting food to poor people in America. McGovern, part mostly out of concern for the poor, Bob somewhat that, but also to help farmers because the government would buy all this surplus food and distribute it to poor people. But they were very close, and Bob was in tears. I'll never forget that conversation. I mean, he could not get himself together, but he still wanted to talk about George. So it wasn't like, you know what, and I got this a lot when Robin Williams died, can we talk about this tomorrow? I can't go there today. But Bob really wanted to talk about George. So, these are people who work together. But were Democrats going to vote for Bob Dole instead of Clinton and let Bob Dole make decisions about the Supreme Court and all these other things, all these other issues? No way in hell. Yeah. And Clinton won, even though a lot of Democrats didn't think Bill Clinton was a nice person. Now, as evil as Trump, no. But that's a that's a low hurdle.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell, you'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.